Hello and welcome to another episode of Oh and That's a Bad Miss, the snooker podcast that aims to bring you all the week's news, and boy have we had a good week for snooker. Well, in some ways it's been really good, in other ways it's just been interesting and controversial. It's been a hell of a week, no lack of news for me to cover. But before we get on to this week's news, I'd like to remind you guys that we are brought to you by reddit.com/r/snooker, the only real place to have daily discussion threads on every ranking event, and a place to just sort of share your thoughts on snooker, ask any questions, and join the community that we've got growing. That's reddit.com/r/snooker. Now, to begin with, we are going to just wrap up this whole match fixing from last year. Last year's matches, which we covered in last episode, with Chow Yu-Peng and Yu-De-Lu. I've got a bit of feedback from one of you guys, and I've also got some updates from BBC Sport. They've got more detail as to exactly what happened. So, it turns out that over a period of 30 months, he fixed 5 matches. This is Yu-De-Lu, at 5 different tournaments. He lied to investigators, failed to cooperate with the investigation, and was betting on snooker when he was banned to do so. So that's why he's got the extensive ban that he has, which means he can't play until 2029. The only reason it wasn't a 13-year ban, I believe it was, that Stephen Lee received, and the reason it's down to a 10-year ban was because Yu-De-Lu eventually, right near the end when he knew he wasn't going to get away with it, admitted fault. He admitted to everything. Stephen Lee never did that. So Stephen Lee will be in his 50s before he even gets the opportunity to return to snooker. Yu-De-Lu, 10 years, still 2029. It's a significant period of time. But specifically now we know that on the day of the Welsh Open against Ali Carter, who totally clean in this, there's no reason to believe that Ali Carter knew anything about what was going on. He was just an innocent bystander in this. 38 betting accounts in the Far East, using some sophisticated computer software, attempted to place a total of £250,000 in 1 second on the result of Chow Yu-Peng's match against Ali Carter. That's £250,000 in 1 second, and they thought it wouldn't flag anything up. Chow later went on to win that to lose that 4-1, and yeah, he did that on purpose. Hence why he's been banned as well. Yu-De-Lu's match, stakes placed on the result was £65,000 and would have generated a profit of £86,000. So it's not small amounts of money involved here. This is some serious dosh. And now I think a lot of people will understand why such... Well, in some people's minds these aren't severe enough. In a lot of people's minds, they need to be banned for a more significant period of time. So yeah, I think that should wrap this up. But last week on Reddit, I had a reply from a user called Aeronautics or Nautics, and he sent this. I find the match fixing as a more complex topic than you give credit. Sure, ban the players, but we need to look at the reasons which cause a player to take this path. Looking at some of the lesser ranked players, you can play most of the tournaments in a year, flying all around the world, and earn less than what you'd get working 40 hours a week minimum wage in the UK. If you allow a different perspective, these players love snooker. They want to succeed, but aren't seeing the financial returns to make it workable. What are the solutions? Take a second job to supplement their income? Okay, more money, but that's potentially less time to play and trickier scheduling when tournaments happen. I fully agree with the bans, but to paint the perpetrators as entirely evil characters is wrong. There are many reasons that these players may choose to engage in those activities. I partially agree with you there. They're not evil people. Well, No, they are not evil people. Chow Yu-peng came out and said it was because of the financial strain that he did what he did. And although Yu Delu didn't say that, you can pretty much assume that the fact that he is putting his career on the line, and I'm sure as more comes out, what is it, David Johns and is it Jamie Jones are currently being investigated. There's more that's going to come out, and it's the lower ranked players who can't afford to tour all year round and live. They're not making enough money, and yes, that's a problem, because no, you're not one of the best players in the world. You're not going to be winning the World Championships. You're not going to be winning the Masters, but you're still some of the best snooker players in the world. If you're in the top 100 best players in the world, you should be making enough to live, as far as I'm concerned. And that's a complex issue. And no, I don't think Chow Yu-peng and Yu Delu are evil completely. I do believe they've made terrible mistakes and should be banned for life. Because letting them off, not letting them off, giving them lesser sentences or pushing the blame onto the system would give more players reason to do it. And a lot of the lower level players aren't doing this. They're not. Okay? And it's just it discourages them. But banning this lot will encourage them to keep working, work harder, because at the end of the day, my personal belief is hard work gives results. No, you may never win the world title, but I think if you put the hours in, you put the work in, and you dedicate yourself enough, no matter what, you should be able to make a living. Now, talking of issues with the system, Ronnie O'Sullivan's had quite a few things to say during the UK Championships this year, this week, including a breakaway tour, which would be quite interesting. I mean, I was with him. As soon as he said that, I thought, okay, I can see a lot of people. I'm not a big fan of Barry Hearn, who, if you don't know, is the chairman of World Snooker and also Matchroom Sports, which covers boxing and darts. So Barry Hearn is just a conglomerate businessman who, you can see anytime a pound coin comes his way, the glint in his eyes. He managed Steve Davis during his prime, so you can see the man knows how to make a star and how to make money out of people, because Steve was never gonna be that outgoing guy on his own without someone pushing him. But O'Sullivan has come out and said that he wants to, as a last resort, if his not demands but his suggestions aren't taken on board, he wants to create a breakaway tour. So a totally separate tour from World Snooker, which would be Champions League style, so it'd just be the top of the top. As he puts it, no numpties. Problem is, he mentioned bringing along Yu Delu and Chow Yu-peng. What? Way to make your new snooker tour sound brilliant by bringing people who have been kicked off the other one for cheating. That's ridiculous, Ronnie. Now, I always get a bit of flack for this. For my O'Sullivan, it's a bit of a dislike, I'll be honest. Ever since I was younger, and for years, he used to, every tournament I watched on the telly, he'd come out and say, I don't fancy playing this year, I think I'll go play pool. And then he'll go and play and win and make millions of pounds off the sport while shit-talking it. Like this week, okay? He spent the whole week talking about how Barry Hearn's ruining snooker, about how he hates playing on the tour, about how the whole tour is with him, how if Steve Davis and Stephen Hendry were on the tour, then they wouldn't want to play either. And yet he makes it to the final, and he's going to make £250,000 or whatever. Like, it's infuriating, because you can't take the spoils of a tour. You can't make so much profit. You can't live the life of luxury that he has, while also shit-talking it the entire way. And yes, he does have some valid complaints. But I think Joe Perry put it best. When he said that Ronnie does talk some sense, but it's overshadowed by the stuff he says that doesn't make sense. Like O'Sullivan said, he's been talking John Higgins. And John Higgins did not have a good week. He hasn't had a good season. Since losing in the World Championships final for the last 2 seasons, which, I mean, most people be so happy to make it that far, but he says it's just papering over the cracks and that he feels he's at the end of his snooker career. And he's going to have to take a good look at the end of the season, because he says he's not going to put himself through it. It's really hard to watch him talk about snooker at the moment. And he ended up losing to Alan McManus 6-5 and crashing out of the UK Championships early. And O'Sullivan has said that John Higgins is willing to join the tour. And apparently so is Stephen Hendry. I mean, that sounds incredible. But the problem is, with all these good things that O'Sullivan says, also come the bad. And I don't think we'll get a breakaway. I think we'll just have... I feel like Ronnie might quit for a few months. Maybe he'll do what he did a few years ago. He won't play for a whole season, and then he'll come back for the Worlds. I don't know. It's difficult to see, because Ronnie seems to change his mind every other day. Like, one day he's saying, I want a breakaway tour, everything's in movement, it's going to happen. The next day he's saying, I only want this as a last resort. And he's constantly bickering and fighting with Barry Hearn. And personally, I'm fed up hearing about it. I just want to watch some snooker, and I want to enjoy snooker, and I want the best players to be financially backed, and I want compensated. That's the word. Blimey, I'm an idiot. I want the best players to be financially compensated, and I want the lower players to be able to follow the tour and to fly around back and forth. Yeah, so there's a lot going on with more behind the scenes stuff. But on the table, we've had a hell of a week at the UK Championships. We've had, obviously, Mark Selby going out before the TV cameras were even there in the first round. And then we had John Higgins being knocked out by Alan McManus. And step by step, players have fallen. Mark Williams ruined my prediction and lost against Stephen Maguire in a final frame decider. And if you haven't seen that double, there's a link to it on Reddit. Should be on the front page or the top of this week. My God, what a double. That, to win a match, that was filthy. And I'm recording this in the morning of Sunday, so it's the final today, and I've cancelled plans with a mate. I've refused money to referee a football match, and I'm just going to sit here and enjoy the snooker today, because God, we're in for a good final, as Mark Allen, the 2018 Masters champion, takes on Ronnie O'Sullivan, the 2017 UK champion, and the mind boggles about how good this match has the possibilities to be. And with everything that's going off the table, I hope it doesn't overshadow it at all. And it won't, because I feel we are in for an absolutely belting match. Mark Allen, after his match last night against Stuart Bingham, where it went to a decider again, plenty of deciders this week, some really good matches. Mark Allen was saying his form's been off, but he's been playing some really good snooker from what I could see. And O'Sullivan hasn't been at his A game. It's just his opponents. He hasn't had the most difficult run to the final. Let's put it that way. And Mark Allen tends to not be scared to play O'Sullivan. A lot of players, when they play Ronnie, they just see aura. They hear the name. They see the press. O'Sullivan goes into every match as a favourite. And that does get in the mind of a lot of players, but not Mark Allen. So I'm hoping, if Mark Allen can win the Masters and the UK in a single calendar year, fantastic. I mean, it'd be brilliant. And then if he goes on to win the Worlds, my God, what a turnaround for a career. He waited so long to win a single major event, and then he wins 2 in 1 year. I mean, incredible. So that's on today. My prediction, I think it will be one of 2 outcomes. I think it will be close and go to the last few frames with, I think it's a best of 19 final, if I'm not mistaken. So I think it will be like 10-8, 10-9 to Mark Allen, or it will be 10-4, 10-5 to Ronnie. It depends on how the first few how the first session goes, really. I think if it's close after the first session, I fancy Mark Allen. If Ronnie accelerates away, you got to fancy him. But that's snooker. You can never really tell. What have you guys thought about the UK so far? I think it's been probably the best tournament this season, and it makes me very excited for the Masters. And we're off to the Scottish Open tomorrow, where there's no break in the system, and I love the Home Nations events. It's so nice. Like, I'll finish work, come home, snooker all the time. It's just always on because there's so many matches, and it's just a flat tournament. The Home Nations, and yeah, the coverage on Eurosport's normally quite good, and the coverage on BBC has been quite nice this week. Although only covering 2 tables at a time in the early rounds is infuriating, because I know, who was it? It was Sonia Carney versus someone. I can't remember who it was against. It was probably the 3rd or 4th round, and there was a match which just looks fascinating, because Sonia Carney, there's something oddly hypnotic about watching him play. And, or what is it? Akani Songa something. I'm glad he shortened his name for us. There's something hypnotic about watching him play, but because it wasn't on the main table or the other TV table, we couldn't watch it. There's no way of watching it. Just chuck a stream up. I know live streaming online isn't free, but the BBC could spare just an extra feed. Don't even have to pay a commentator. Just chuck a camera there. Hardcore fans will watch it. But, you know, got to take what you can. Take what you can get. But the BBC have done a good job overall, as far as I can see. You've got Alan McManus. Sean Murphy joined them after being knocked out early, which I really enjoyed. I've seen a few people not too sure about it, but for someone so new to the punditry game, who I haven't actually heard commentate before, I don't think, to hop straight onto the BBC, I think he's nailed it. And with them removing John Virgo from everything but the Worlds, and no Willie Thorne, no Terry Griffith, no Clive Everton. Why would you get rid of Clive Everton? That man's voice is perfect for snooker, but the BBC, nah, don't need him. So now Clive only commentates on the ITV events, and not too many matches of that, and we have to put up with Phil Yates, who, yeah, his commentary's something. But yeah, I think the BBC's done a good job. Alan McManus, Stephen Hendry, Steve Davis, watching Ronnie O'Sullivan play, you can't beat that. I mean, that's peak snooker, that is, I think. Yeah, you can't beat that. Speaking of Sonia Carney, there was a situation earlier in the tournament in a match between Sonia Carney and Jack Jones, where referee Leo Scullion, who is one of the most experienced referees other than Jan Verhaas, told Akani during the mid-session interval to play more attacking snooker. Now, that sounds like, oh, that's a bit dodgy. You can't be giving tips to players. But it was because both players were averaging over 30 seconds a shot. Over 30 seconds for every single, well, not every single shot, but as an average. That's huge. I think it took them 2.5 hours to play 4 frames. I mean, snooker's supposed to be entertainment, but I mean, I'm a pretty hardcore snooker fan, and that would kill me. I'm glad I didn't watch that match, because that's too long. And Barry Hearn put it. I don't agree with Barry Hearn very often, but it does. It's almost comparable to cheating. It's bad sportsmanship. It's like Robert Milkins averaging, I think, 31 seconds a shot throughout the whole season. You don't need to play that slow. I'm sorry. I think it's is it Noppon Sankam who's got the fastest shot time at around 16 seconds. Anywhere around 22, 23, I think, is fair. That's where you should be if you're an average player, not 30 plus seconds, because that ruins people's enjoyment of watching. That kills the flow of the game. And I agree that Leo Scullion had the right to tell them to start playing more attacking, because Barry Hearn has made it perfectly clear that he's going to name and shame people above 30 seconds, and should. And I don't think there should be a shot clock. Never a shot clock, please. The snooker shootout has proved that we don't want a shot clock in snooker. But I think we should, post-match, maybe a bit of a punishment if you play too slow. Because it is bad sportsmanship, as far as I can tell. So yeah, there's the review of the UK Championships for this year so far. Like I said, I'm going to be watching that all day. That will be an incredible match, I think. Mark Allen, Ronnie O'Sullivan. I think if you'd come to me at the beginning of the tournament and said that'd be the final, I'd be just as hyped as I am now. Because there's some tournaments where it gets down to the final four and you look at it and you think, is that really the best we've got? But seeing O'Sullivan and Allen possibility in the final, and then when it did happen, you just think it's brilliant as far as I'm concerned. Before I wrap this up, again, going to point you over to reddit.com/r/snooker. That's what the podcast is brought to you by. And also, the podcast is now available on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and SoundCloud. So head on to any of them, your chosen platform, and subscribe, like, share. That's the best way to help the podcast, is if you've got friends who like snooker, and maybe they struggle to keep up to date with what's happening. In this last 22 minutes and 50 seconds, I've pretty much summed up a week. So if you send them my way, that would be very much appreciated. And again, feel free to leave comments in your chosen platform, whether that's on Reddit, on YouTube, on Twitter @and_that's_a_bad_1, or email me. All the links are in the description. And yeah, thanks for listening. Hope you guys enjoy the final. And I will see you next week with a review of the final. God knows what else is going to happen between Barry Hearn and O'Sullivan. And the beginning of the Scottish Open. Good week for snooker. Goodbye.